Movers podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, NoirEtBlancVie, runs a YouTube channel dedicated to cataloging various analog synthesizers. Noir, would you like to kind of explain how you got your start on YouTube and your love of analog synthesizers, where that came from?
Good to be here, by the way, because it's good to be wanted. So yeah, I started my YouTube channel in 2015, and I guess because I didn't understand YouTube at the time, I kind of thought that it was all cat videos, and then started to watch a bunch of videos by a lot of creators. Thought that I could make something out of it because I had some skills doing some like music videos in the past and then doing video editing and obviously being a musician. And so when I started the channel, I knew about really one channel, which was a channel by a person called Jexus. And that's where my analog synth love came from, because I was using analog synths long before I made any videos. And yeah, the love came from him and all of his stories of collecting synths in Poland and making videos.
I'm familiar mostly with some of your reviews and stuff. I've seen your kind of general videos on Jexus, but could you kind of, give a brief rundown to him for our audience?
Oh yeah. So Jexus, who, I still don't actually know his name. He was and is back as a YouTuber who made a lot of very creative analog synth videos and also digital synth videos, where he used very creative video editing and capturing approach, where he would actually record to VHS tape and do a very kind of, I don't want to genre categorize, do that kind of a thing. He does so many different things, but he would just do very, I would call it almost montage of patches that he created in a very visual collage kind of way. It's almost like you have to see it to understand it.
When especially you're dealing with sound and music, that's something that I guess traditionally you don't think as much about as the visual element. But of course, these machines were obviously meant for more than just making music. They also had to have a certain presentation style to them. I mean, if you look at the old Moogs or the 80s DX7s, they look very much of their time, and I feel like that craftsmanship really has to be highlighted, that kind of hardware. And I think that a montage video style can really build that kind of mystique around these types of synthesizers and music hardware.
I totally agree, especially in the case of Jexus's videos back then. He wasn't necessarily showing off every little edge or crevice or doing but you could get a feeling of how he was using it, because he would turn the knobs, and if there was a thing you could hear, was the character in the synthesizer itself. He seemed to really be able to coax the individual character out of equipment more than I think if someone were to take the AN1X and play it, and then also play, say, the JX3P, they would try to make them sound like they think an analog synth sound, versus where, at least how I know, right, when I owned a JX3P, the JX3P sounds like a crackly, not very cleanly done piece of equipment, where the AN1X can be very, very clean and analog-esque sounding. But when Jexus makes the videos, the AN1X sounds very much like an AN1X, and the JX3P sounds just like a JX3P sounds.
That's what bothers me about a lot of this new crop of, I'm sure you're familiar with retro wave, where they're trying to hawk that 80s sound, but it's done in such a way that it loses its emotive character because they're just trying to make it all sound the same. Whereas I feel like the musicians that were playing those instruments back in the day, they were playing to their strengths, and sometimes unconventional strengths, like you talked about, having that kind of crackly or lo-fi quality.
Yeah. I totally think that it's almost like this, what people think something sounds like versus what it actually sounds like. Someone will get like a brand new like synthesizer or something, and they'll say, "Oh, I want it to sound like a vintage synth, right?" And they do is put like a detuner on it, right? That's the way you think a synth sounded versus, I would never say like a JX3P sounds detunish. It doesn't, because it's like a CO synth. It's very plucky and crackly. So when you just detune a synth and say like, "Oh, that's how an 80s synth sounds," it's like that's how an 80s synth sound did, but that's not every synth of that era.
When people, I feel like the go-to guy that everybody tries to recreate is Vangelis, and I swear, like, he knew how to bring tones out of that Yamaha CS80 that I've never heard a recreation that really comes close, in my opinion. I've heard good ones.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest misconception that, and even I had this, long time ago, whatever, was that an analog synth sounds like, quote, an analog synth. That's kind of the weird part about it. Like, say like a Gibson with humbucker pickups sounds different than a Fender with like a single coil pickup, right? It's a guitar, sure, but guitars sound different, right? And I think that's where the misconception was like, well, it sounds like an analog synth, right? Like, it sounds, but an analog synth isn't just one thing that they made. It's many different layers and different iterations, and also, every DX7 sound isn't a DX7 sound. You know what I'm saying? It's the digital electric keyboard sound of the 80s. Not every one was a DX7. It's not just one thing. It's many different things with different characters.
Yeah. I guess on that note, since there are so many sounds that you can coax out of really almost any synth, that's kind of the nature of it, is that you have so many variables you can manipulate. Kind of, like you said, the quote-unquote differences in sound between an analog synth and a digital synth or whatever are totally dependent upon how they're being used and when they're being used, and it's not always necessarily the hardware. In fact, it's almost never the hardware, because you can get a lot of different sounds out of almost any piece of hardware of that kind. So I guess the question is, with that in mind, what draws you consistently analog synths and to collect and learn about them?
Well, for me, I think that my number one, my experience with analog synths didn't start until I was in my early 20s, because my mom bought me a Korg MS 2000B when I was like, I forget, maybe like 18 or something. So my experience was like, it started with a digital rendition, and an analog modeling synth, where it's modeling analog circuits. Yeah, so that was my experience with a synthesizer first, where I could make my own patches. That was my first experience. And so the funny thing is like, after I had that, the first actual analog synth I ever bought was the Juno 106. And that synth is so easy to use, and it's fun, and it sounds great. And is not a lot of there's not a lot of things that can go wrong in patch
Sure.
creation. Like, quote, patch creation wise, like there's a wrong with voice chips, and it's old, right? So I thought, oh, this is fun and easy and intuitive. It felt kind of like the MS-2000B because it's very easy to control. And so then Roland JX3P. I think that was probably my next synth. But I got the JX3P just on its own without the controller module, just on its own. And that synth was a freaking nightmare because it's so hard to get the things you want to work working, because it's like you can't do like two different like waveforms without the controller. And I never liked that synth. And that's when I realized, for me, it's more about the experience with an instrument versus always just the total sound quality. It's like the whole package of like, am I having fun and is easy? And if it's not fun, it's not easy, and it's making me feel like I'm having to work to make a sound, that to me is not what draws me to an instrument. It's all about the intuitiveness, and can I see something and change it right then? I don't want to menu dive or do any of that.
And you don't want to have to go and buy expensive add-ons. Like, I hate when you buy something and then you find out, oh yeah, but you actually need these 3 other things to make it work. It's like, what's the point? Why not just give me that out of box?
Exactly. Yeah, it was funny. I think I bought the JX3P. I got it for super cheap because it was like when the economy was terrible. So I got it for like 180 or something. And I was like, dude, this is a killer steal. It was in pretty good condition, right? Guy was just trying to get rid of it.
Uh-huh.
Then I realized how terrible it was to work with. And I said, oh, shit. Now I'm going to go get that controller module. The freaking controller module was $400. He was selling it. It was ridiculous. Like, I go back on Craigslist and he's selling it separately because he knows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh crud. No, he didn't tell me. He never told me. So I don't buy it. And then eventually I just sell the JX3P. I sold so many in that era. I wish I didn't, but it taught me a good lesson about what I want in a synth versus everyone who runs out and just says analog is good regardless.
I guess it's just important to mention the whole experience that the user has, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, if you can get the same sounds, maybe with a little extra work, but you can get essentially the same kinds of sounds out of many analog synths that you might be able to get out of digital synths that you can get for free or much cheaper than an analog synth, then at some point you'd have to say, well, what draws you to the analog synth? And I think to a large extent, it's, that playful sort of tactile, you see a knob, you can literally twist it with your fingers and get a new sound. You don't have to go through a screen or anything. If you have an analog synth that's unnecessarily complicated and just difficult to figure out with no real reward for it, then it feels kind of pointless. But if you have one that's, and I'm not a big analog synth person, so maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a big part of it is for you to feel like you really do have any sound you want just at the touch of your fingers, and you can, in a very, very real physical sense, manipulate that sound.
It's like lost a lot of times on even someone like myself, who I totally admit to being like a preset person a lot of the time, because when a synth is complex, it's almost so deep that you're struggling to find where on that piece of equipment is the second or third LFO. Chances are it's in a menu, right?
Yeah.
And that could become very cumbersome to navigate when you want to stay creative and in the moment, but you're like, what am I doing? I made a commitment to myself for the channel in general, never to review a complex synth again, because it's too much. Giving someone a subjective opinion about something is pretty easy when you know something through and through, something very simple like an Arturia mini brute or something. But giving an opinion when something is literally like a supercomputer of sound, that's kind of hard for me, honestly.
What's been the worst offender in that category for you? What's been a synth that just absolutely could not wrap your head around and got real frustrated with it?
I would say I probably still own it, even though it's. I would say if I could go back in time and say it was a terrible buy when I first got it was the Dave Smith Instruments Tempest. I think that they built the most powerful synth and drum machine, but then they built it on top of each other. And it's like you have two synth minds. Like I always thought of it this way: like there's a reason why Dave Smith and Roger Lynn haven't done another piece of equipment. It's like they're so good at doing their own thing. I don't know how in the world this happened. Something this like kind of unintuitive. The menu system is so deep. It's crippling itself deep. Now, when you figure it out, it's amazing. It's the best thing you ever used, but it's literally like two people tried to make something and then they got to a point where each person was like, no, it should be like this. And the other person was like, no, it should be like this. They said, fuck it, we can't have it. Just do both, but on top of each other. I love the Tempest. I could use it all day, but there's a reason why I believe that the community is so divided about that piece of equipment.
I don't know if you've ever seen them, but like sometimes people would have these guitars and they'd have multiple necks, and one neck would be bass guitar, and another neck would be a guitar, regular guitar, and another neck would be just something else for some reason. And it's like, it almost looks sort of cool, but it's just so, you can't play them all at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's quite the same concept, but it sounds like it.
It's I don't know if you guys are big like Simpsons fans. I'm a big Simpsons fan, but there was an episode where like Homer's brother, long lost brother, gave him the ability to like build his own car, and he gets to talk to the engineers, and he's like, it should have cup holders.
Yes, I've seen that.
And then, he says like, he finally at the end is like, he's so proud of it. And then his brother's like, wait, how much did this cost? And it's so expensive. He's like, I'm ruined. And like, that's how I think of like the Tempest. It's literally like someone kept saying like, no, it can have put more cup holders here. I need to put my drink here. And then Dave is like, you're right, but it should also have, and they're so like, and then it comes out and it's $2,000.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then someone's like, but wait, what about sampling? And they're like, sampling?
I would gladly pay that much for a synth with cup holders, though, I'll tell you that much.
I would like to see the mock-up of that. Actually, someone should mock up the Tempest with cup holders, put like $2,000 on it, and say like, now would you buy it? And you're like, yeah, maybe.
They should do the mock-up in like that mid-2000s DeviantArt fake iPhone mock-up style.
Oh gosh, I could. Yes, some of them have like a 3D screen. They do like a lot of that because it's like the Android Engage concept. It's like, okay, this is terrible. Yeah, that's like what happened. It was literally like, hey, the company's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Dave Smith Instruments finally like we're making some money. Like, what we should do, like me and you, Dave, we could make the greatest synth drum machine ever. And then they do it, right? And then at the end, everyone's like, what did you do? And they're like, isn't it great? And everyone's like, well, I mean, it still sells like brand new for like $2,000. And like those who know, realize that like no person in their right mind who doesn't want to just challenge themselves instead of actually like having fun. Like it's not fun. I would never tell anyone the Tempest is fun. At first, but when you finally understand how it works, it's like the most powerful thing ever. But I would never, ever, 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 ever want to do like an objective review of like the Tempest, like just telling you like this is how it is, because I don't think that you'd come out of it being like, oh, that was a smart thing to do.
Be like, now I really want to buy that.
I think when I made the video, I told people like it was actually really interesting. Like the Tempest has a great like the name, like the word Tempest like means like a violent storm, right? And like what a great name for like literally what it feels like. Two people to do this thing. It literally, I said like, oh, you know, my time Tempest started out like a violent windy storm as it did, and then eventually clouds cleared and it all made sense. You know, worst $2,000 I ever spent in a year, like after that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I feel this kind of reminds me a bit of, like, to go in a completely different direction, the development of Windows Vista. Because, like, I knew absolutely, like, back when that came out, I knew, like, nothing about all that stuff. But I just remember, like, as a kid, Windows XP was simple as pie, Fisher-Price, you know, straightforward. And Windows Vista had so many things, and I knew it was a bad sign when it took like 2 days to finish installing.
Yeah. Windows Vista was just such a funny like period of time in like computers, where I think of it like this: if you thought, you know, because everyone hated Macs still a little bit at that time, if you hated Macs, we'll hate Windows.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that, and they totally tried to rectify that whole Vista thing. Like, never did a new operating system come out so fast.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, it's just like even now, like, they had Windows 8, but then they had 8.1, but then they had 8.1 of 1, and it's like, come on, guys, shouldn't you get this stuff right? Like, and I feel this relates with, you know, synthesizers. Like, what happens to quality control? Where are people to test this stuff? Do they just expect, like, well, the guys that are interested in it are all experts, which means they love to slave away at this stuff. Just because you're an expert does not mean that's what you necessarily love to have to torture yourself for.
Yeah, I think that that's actually that's an interesting topic, because I'm not the person to get any of this stuff. Like, maybe it may seem to other people like it, but like, who beta tests synthesizers? Because one, there's not as many problems on them. One, but two, that I mean, someone must beta test the synthesizer, or maybe it's just such a small market that like the companies can do it in house or something.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know.
You know, because you don't get like there's no leaks ever. You know, if this making sense, like the iPhone 11, it'll get like leaked. Concept art will get leaked a month before, and then a real mock-up will get leaked like a week before, and then it will be like fully announced or something, right? But it's like, you know, no like concept, or I never see that.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe that's why. I was gonna say maybe that's why the Tempest was such a complicated, not user-friendly device, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. That might have just been like what they were going for, and nobody was gonna stop them.
I I've asked like many times, like to the people, like, hey, you know, it would be really good, like Tempest 2, and always like, oh, you know, and I would say, you know, me being a fan slash very distant friend of Dave Smith and people who work at Dave Smith, if you guys know, like the Prophet X is their newest synth, right? Right?
Okay, I'm not aware that they're of all their stuff, but yeah, I know that there's been other models of the Prophet synthesizer they've been making.
Yeah, that's the new one, right? And it's like it's a weird synth because it has like the feeling of like the Tempest where people are like you know, where it's so much. Sometimes I think on a synth there is a point where there is too much, like the Alesis Andromeda. I've only got to mess with the Alesis Andromeda one time, right? And it was like all I thought the whole time was like, it's too much. It's too much here. And I think that like it flies in the way of creativity when you're sort of the conventional thought process about how to do something is stifled by how many layers you have to go through to achieve what it is.
Yeah.
You know, like that's why iPhones work so well, right? It's just like
Exactly.
you think you even if you don't know how something works, your brain thinks of like, oh, I would do this, and you do that and it works.
Well, you know, it's interesting because like the first time I got a touchscreen smartphone, it was just so like simple to me. Like now when I have to program, you know, my dad's dad phone, like it's a pain for me because I'm just those controls are so frustrating. I used to think, you know, touchscreens, well, I wasn't against the concept. I thought, you know, are they really that easy? But they really are that easy. And, you know, it's basic controls and ideas like that. I feel like these synth companies, because they kind of just target, I won't call them luxury products, but they are a higher end demographic. If you're buying these synthesizers, chances are you have money laying around. You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they don't understand like minimalism either. Like they'll have 1,000 switches. Like I went to a store here in my city, one of the few that's still around, Sam Ash, and they had like these huge.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, they had like these huge synthesizers, and I'm thinking, you know, I understand the reason behind why you might still own, whether it's digital, analog, whatever, you know, a physical piece of hardware, but at least make it portable and you know, easy to use, like you said. It doesn't have to be this gigantic museum piece. Like if you want that, okay, but you know, it just seems a little bit excessive.
Yeah, I think we haven't, you know, I'm obviously not a synth designer, but I think about analog synths as such a ultimate collector's item because in almost everything else in life, we try to do the opposite and the maximum amount, but getting the most from it. So, you know, like some people want the iPhone, right? Also, some people want the iPhone Plus, the big ass version, right?
Yeah.
But then how much smaller is this phone than the phone that you used to have to like have in your car or like from the 80s? You know what I'm saying? Like nobody asks for the freaking giant phone from Saved by the Bell. With synths, it's crazy because you're just like, look, how come we can fit a supercomputer into this phone, but the synthesizer is still as giant as it was in 1980? It's like people want to show it off. They're not here for the efficiency. They're not here for the technical advancement. They're just here because they have this nostalgic thing and they want other people to like recognize that this is their thing.
Talking on the subject of technical features, have you ever, I know that this isn't obviously analog, but have you ever used the Roland V synth? Because that is the one synthesizer that I can think of in terms of like sampling and all that, that would definitely, like there's no VST that even comes close to, I mean, it's not the technology isn't there, but just like the interesting patches I haven't really heard something like that recreated.
I remember the V-Synth specifically because at the time that came out, I was uh, really into the Roland Phantom X synthesizers. Oh, right, synthesizer. It's a workstation, right? And I own the Phantom X6 and love that. And I like the synth functionality and the sound, to be honest, from the Roland Phantom, which a lot of it was from the V synth and found in that ecosystem, like the rack mount and also the bigger synth. I think that because of people's nostalgic, people seem to not like workstations. They're a touring uh, or like professional, like workhorse keyboard player. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
it's the workstation keyboard is almost as unsexy as like if you remember those like ensemble synthesizers. The arranger and ensemble keyboards are much bigger in different countries. Basically, it's just like when a company releases like an arranger synthesizer, it's like ew. And I think that that's what happened like with the synth community. Like people don't want the Korg Triton anymore. They want like either plugins or they want like an analog synth or they want like a piano type of thing. Because the actual funny thing is like when I ask like my professional keyboard friends or whatever, if I say to them like, hey, what's your synthesizer or whatever, like somebody who actually plays like every day, like my friend Ron Avant plays for Anderson Paak, he'd literally say his favorite synth is probably the Motif. Like he would just say the Motif. But most people wouldn't be, oh yeah, it's a synth. It's the workstation keyboard. But like to him,
Right.
it's everything.
When I saw a musician I follow, George Clanton, he had this kind of setup. It was like, I want to say almost like a miniature like DJ mixing station, but then it was also like a synthesizer. Like I'm probably remembering it. I'm probably not remembering it the best, but I thought that was like a really interesting approach to that.
I think about synthesizers and music and things like that. I think that most everyone who is in the community around has at least heard the name Aphex Twin, right? I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
For years and years and years and years, I and other people would be fans. We would try to figure out or find what synth did Aphex Twin use on, Bubble Johnny, or which, this was like, and to this day, no one has ever really seen Aphex Twin's synth, whatever you want to say. People have said, oh, I saw him use this at this thing, or I saw him do this, right? Aphex Twin, possibly the one of the top 5 most influential and popular electronic artists of all time. And no one still knows for a fact what he used. He never says what he used. And my thought was always like, well, when I listen to Aphex Twin's, just his like piano pieces, right? He's such a good composer that it doesn't matter what he uses. His compositions, that's what makes this great. He's so good at being a musician that he would have figured out what to use regardless. So I know there's always a lot of talk about the thing that made the sound, but it's like it's all a vision. Like I think someone said something one time where it's like, oh, he did what's his sort of new album, Aphex Twin. I forgot. Before Cheetah. I forgot. But he did an album, and I think like somebody like said, or it came out, someone was like, oh, they found out that like he did the album in like Logic or something.
Yeah.
And someone was like, no, like like that there's no way like he would do it in Logic. And it's kind of like why not? Like
yeah.
I mean, it was like probably 2016 or 17 when that album came out. And
was it Cyro?
Yeah, it was Cyro.
Yeah, okay, that was 2014.
Oh gosh, it's been that long?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Um, but it was like it's just so weird people's concept of like the imagination behind gear and then the lust for the thing that they don't have the musical chops or composition like expertise to even create something like that. So who cares like if he
Right.
used the because someone was like, oh yeah, he Aphex Twin, this was like years ago, I remember someone's like he used the MS-20 on the bass line, drugs, some shit. It's like nobody was listening to what synth that was. Like heard that crap.
Oh.
Like so insignificant.
Like ultimately with
Yeah.
like bass tones, like there's only so many directions you can take it.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, unless we're delving into, sample based or, some kind of like wave based crazy stuff. But even then, I mean, it's at such a low
Yeah.
register anyway. Like, I don't know. I don't know how these people can
Yeah.
tell that. Maybe they're right. But, at the end of the day, does it really matter?
What the question of like, so which synth is best for like bass? And it's like, look, can it reproduce sounds from like 20 hertz to about 150 hertz? If yes,
No,
that's the best synth for bass.
exactly. And like,
Yeah.
like sound design is so important that you can take. I've taken bits and pieces of samples and I've tweaked them in such a way that they almost sound like they could be synthesizer effect. To me as an amateur, I can imagine what some of these, high-end producers are able to do with just all kinds of random stuff, and you'll never know it because it's under so many layers of processing. It's just blended into the track so well.
Exactly. I uh, so much of the time, well, actually, this is kind of a fun little, I don't know, tidbit is like everything is contextual, yet everyone makes everything about the individual instrument, which is just, it blows my mind
Uh-huh.
because like I was watching a demonstration with somebody who mixed, he was a dude, the guy who mixed This Is America. The guy was literally showing, he was like, here's how I mix the bass, right? And he was using a bunch of plugins and stuff, and
Yeah, sure.
I'm listening to it, right? And he's like, so he solos the bass, and then he's like messing with like 4 or 5 plugins. Like, okay, I do this, then I drop the sub harmonic thing, and then blah blah blah. And I'm standing there being like, yeah, I hear like the like tiny ounce of difference here, right? Once he put it back into the track from before, it made everything work. And it's so strange that like people ask about one thing, like which synth is best for bass, and it's always this thing of like, if I was sitting there listening to you, like listening to the whole song without bass, and then you told me which of these is best for the bass in this song, it's like I would say probably the Smoke, or I would say maybe the Korg monologue. But you're just asking about an insignificant individual instrument
Yeah.
outside of the context of actual music.
So,
It doesn't matter.
yeah, because ultimately it's on the performer to bring out a certain texture, and you place it all together, and then you get the final result. You obviously have had a long love affair with music and synthesis and instruments. Do you have like any training growing up as a kid? Is that like, when did you first start to get into music?
I honestly got into actual production of music when I was maybe 15, 16. I played the flute before that. I just read music and you just sight replay the flute or whatever. It's easy. It's a one note instrument. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's one note instrument where you're reading a piece of paper and reproducing something already written. That's what I did. And then when I got into making my own music, my mom had like this keyboard in the garage, this Radio Shack keyboard, where unfortunately I still have the songs I made on it. It sounds god awful. I honestly don't know how I'm decent at playing instruments at this point after I go back and listen to that, but I guess I just stuck with it. So yeah, I got uh, I got into Berkeley after I went to like junior college for a couple years. I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. My mom she told me I should. So yeah, I just went to Berkeley and didn't go to classes, and eventually actually went to classes. And then when I graduated college, I just moved out to LA and just I kind of picked up where I left off. I was producing like some small albums where I grew up in Orange County.
That's
Any
not too
people who
far.
like, yeah, I mean, I grew up in Huntington Beach, and
Okay.
yeah, I produced a bunch of small like pop punk bands, or like hardcore was a big thing when I was growing up. Like, yeah, so I did some like groups. Like, I mean, the biggest group I ever worked with was this band called Orangeburg Massacre, who did this Pluto Records thing. Is so long ago, but I just wanted to produce. And then when I got out to LA, I started working in sound for movies and stuff. Sort of just switched over to doing production and playing keyboards like at night and on the weekend, just like a gigging player. And then during my days, I was working in like movies, doing like music, mixing stuff, or like editing stuff later on.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we had a guest on many weeks ago now, Jesse Ray, and now he does mixes for like hip hop and R&B. He's based out of LA. He actually got his start mixing a lot of hardcore and I think pop punk or similar kind of, I think more rock inclined stuff. Yeah, it's interesting because he was way out in the Midwest. He came to LA, like you were obviously much closer.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that I meant for it to go that way. It's just, I was young, and the fads at the time where I was going to find my my niche, right? And like hardcore music was just so big at the time. I literally went on Craigslist and was like, "Hey, I want to like produce your band or group. So basically, if you want to get like free album made, write me back, right?" And Orangeburg Massacre was like the band who did. They went on to get a small deal, and was it's pretty cool. It was like my claim to fame is out at college or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was always wanting to produce and compose, uh, but at the same time, I was really trying to also get like my jazz like piano chops at the same time. So
Those are two things you don't typically relate with each other, you know, jazz, classical jazz, and hardcore music.
yeah, I think I learned a lot about not following the rules from being around those guys, as when I'm in school, constantly like being told like this is what you should do. I tell anybody the worst thing you can do is not learn music, and then learn music, and then go back to trying to not learn music. Is it the best thing that I ever like probably did? Yes, but it's only for those times. Like, honestly, I'd say this, like, if I make a song where the verse and the chorus don't make any sense, but they're both strong on their own,
Yeah.
but I want to make them work together, I know, say, the chord cadence that needs to happen to make them blend seamlessly. And the only
Yeah.
way I knew that was through learning music. Got to go to the secondary dominant. I know all the tricks because of that experience.
I produce music because I have, you know, no real official training. Like, I'm jealous because, like, I wish I could do that, you know, be able to blend two things together into a seamless piece. Because sometimes I'll work on a verse or chorus and it sounds really good, it just doesn't fit. And I just can't, you know,
Mm-hmm.
can't get my mojo.
Yeah, it's funny because I just made a bunch of music for YouTube, their Creative Commons,
Um,
whatever you
yeah.
call it, the thing. So I just finally finished the second part of it, and so many of the songs, I was like, okay, I got this dope loop for the chorus part, great, great, great. And then I start trying to work on the verse to make it make sense, but it doesn't, because the chorus is usually so, at least for me, like it's going to be it's going to have a lot of flavor in it. It's not just like a one, not a 1-4-5 or something, right? So it's hard because I got to make something go into that that's going to make sense. And I would say like 80% of the time when I was working on this, two things that totally didn't go together ended up having to be fit together through like what we call like a turnaround at the end of the chorus or at the end of the verse. And then it sounds good going into it, but in no way does it make like, quote, musical sense. There is no real key.
I've felt that, listening to some music, and sometimes like that can actually be the strongest part of it. I love when a piece starts to go in a direction you think you know what the next chord is going to be, and then it just totally blows your mind with something different. And so I appreciate that too.
Yeah, I was going to make a video since I've been gone for a while. I've thought many times about making a video about like my playing style, because people will ask like a lot of times like, man, like, so like how do you like play, like how do you like make these compositions? And it's crazy because I want to like say things like in the video, because to me it seems easy. To me, my philosophy is just like, I would say like you could just pick any kinds of chords you want, and then like all you really need to know is the major and the minor scale. After you know the major and the minor scale, you can do anything as long as you. But I realize it's not that simple. Even though it is that simple, it's not that simple. But I struggle with trying to teach people how to be creative when I know that it's just a process, Also, I don't want to teach anyone how to be, creative. It's like telling someone how to be themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to stifle that part of someone's personality. So we're going to take a
Is huge. I have like 80. Welcome. You've got mail. You've got. Goodbye.
bitches wanna fuck like they not walk shit. Feel like Coco Minel and I'm not human. None these oxy bitches wanna fuck but I'm not listening.
I go hard in the motherfucking paint, nigga. Then you stankin', nigga. What the fuck you thinking, nigga? I won't die for this shit or what the fuck I say. Front yard, broad day with the SK. See Gucci, that's my motherfucking nigga. I hang in the down with them hit squad killers. Walk a flock of flame on the hood ass nigga. Riding real slow, bending corners, my nigga. What's up, pussy nigga? What's up, fuck nigga? But I got on that nigga. Make your mama's mama miss you. Hope you got your killers with you. Hope you got your niggas with you. Hope your goons riding with you. They gon' fucking miss you, nigga.
capital investments, the best web design company, the best personal website on the internet.
Welcome back to the World Movers Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Angelfyre, with my co-host Noah, aka 51st Citizen, and we have our guest, YouTube synth reviewer, NoirEtBlancVie. When we last left off, we were talking about his journey out to LA and his experience basically in music. And my question to you is, when you got on YouTube, how have you seen things change for you as you've grown through the years as a review channel? How's that impacted you, and how was it like, making friends with other channels along the way? Have you done that? Have you networked a lot from this? What's the experience overall?
I would say that, I posted my first random video back in maybe December of 2015. So I always say, like, the channel actually officially started in 2016, in like February or something of 2016. And back then, maybe it sounds strange to people now because it doesn't seem like that long ago when you say like 2016, 2019, but in the world of like YouTube, it was totally different from like my point of view of like how the game was played, if that makes sense. And when I started was more about like figuring out how to reach the people that you thought were going to be hopefully your audience, because you didn't know where they were coming from. And starting out just enjoying other channels and trying to like imitate and pay homage to those people, like the angry video game nerd James Rolfe was a big part of me starting the channel. I liked his style, I liked his consistency. I mean, I think to date he's done like over 150 episodes of the Angry Video Game Nerd, which the 1 minute synth reviews was like based on. But I've seen so many different things, over the years, with cancel culture being such a big thing now. It's been tough to see people that I was inspired by go down. I mean, I don't think I said it at the time, but I probably said it at some point. Pro Jared, who's a who's a video game reviewer. Pro Jared Knobbenbauer, whatever. He had a series called 1 minute reviews for video games. And so I took a lot of inspiration for my 1 minute synth review from his series. Not exactly, but if you watch the first couple episodes, you'll see very much the same thing. So watching people who I looked up to take big hits, like personally, and go down makes you change the way you feel about being a public figure, quote, on a very large social platform. That's what's changed in my mind, at least.
I didn't follow Pro Jared, but there's been other people in the traditional media that I used to follow, and then you find this stuff out. They make these kind of non-denials. It makes me kind of lose faith, maybe not in humanity, but just like in the sense of these are people that I thought, maybe I didn't think they were the best people in the world, but I thought they had at least some kind of common decency.
This point, a lot of times, at least on Twitter, John Jafari was a big part of why I started. Like, honestly, I would say probably it goes like James Rolfe, like Angry Video Game Nerd 1, Pro Jared 2, and then like JonTron number 3 for the reasons why I started the channel at all. And I think he had some sort of like a racist or whatever issue he had with
yeah, I mean, it seemed pretty clear to me, like, what he was saying was sympathizing with a lot of other alt-right people on YouTube or at large.
Yeah, and that was like that was something I had to sit and really like think about, was just like, I realized at some point, I was like, he's a person. He isn't JonTron. JonTron is a character. Like, John Jafari is John Jafari, and just like nobody, I don't think anybody thought like, oh yeah, Pro Jared, the guy we all like laugh and is quirky, is running like a nudes Tumblr. Nobody thinks that. Like, it would be the furthest thing from my mind that guy runs. But then I remember I had to say to myself again, he's not Pro Jared, he's Jared Knabenbauer. So everything that I think about people, just like, these are just people, and like maybe I'm the problem for making up in my mind who I decided this person should be versus I've never met Pro Jared, I've never met JonTron. Like, I'm literally deciding, like, in my mind, like, oh yeah, Pro Jared on the weekends, he plays games and Pokemon Go with his cute wife, and actually he's in a polyamorous relationship and showing his dick all the time. That's what's actually. And my thing is, I made up in my mind that Pro Jared is who I decided he was, but that's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So the only person who let themselves down was like me and my imagination of who I thought this person was. So.
But I mean, like, their charisma, they obviously, to play that part, they have to have charisma, to pull it off and do people. I'm just concerned, like, these kind of antics, what's going to happen to everybody else? Because all the other content creators, whenever a major content creator does something stupid, everybody else, because this is how YouTube works, they have to punish everybody else for it. And it's like, when I see PewDiePie saying, oh, check this channel out. Oh, whoops, it turns out the guy's an admitted racist. It's like, oh, come on, man. Like, you have a responsibility. That's not to say that, oh, you're under some kind of tyranny, but you do have a responsibility to act in a way, because whether you like it or not, you have an influence on people, just like you said.
Yeah. It's the toughest part, I think, is and I don't know, but maybe I do know how this is. I'll put it like this, because this is something that hit me firsthand, that I totally can understand, like, how this is. Like, this is a while ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, I was interviewed by this girl who was in high school, right? She ran like the newspaper at her like school in like Louisiana or whatever. And she was like, I think she was like 16 or 17 maybe. And she emailed me and she's like, I really like your channel, and like, could I interview for like my newspaper podcast thing? And I was, yeah, for sure, But I realized, like, at that very moment, everything that I did from then on with that person was like much different than from any other, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is 17-year-old
Yeah,
high
sure,
school
exactly.
person. You know, she looks up to me. I guess, I don't know, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
so quickly that could become an ability to do nefarious things if that's who
Yeah.
you are. And even if that's not who you are, yeah, people have dark moments where they want to test the limits of whatever it is, right? I mean, that one dude, forgot his name, but he was like a music guy who like had girls twerk for him and stuff.
Oh, I think I know. Yeah.
Austin Jones.
Austin
yeah.
Jones. Okay.
Yeah, he was like the guy who was like, he clearly had like some sort of a compulsion to this where like he's like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop. But then the story goes deeper where he's like having like 14-year-olds twerking, saying like, you want to be my biggest fan, and then like say you're 14. Like, if that's what you are maybe inclined to, it might not be best for you to even have a social presence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they say they're sorry and they won't do it again, but their fan base is majority of the time underage, so I don't really see how they're gonna stop. But I think, you know, even barring something as extreme as that, just in general, fans have a certain perception of you, and if you say something in passing, it can really affect them in maybe a way that you don't think about. And like, you know, down the road you run into this person again and they hate your guts. You know, I mean, even that is such an important thing to be mindful of, is that, you know, these people have a perception of you whether you like it or not because you're a YouTuber or you're, you know, a musician, whatever.
Yeah, it's yeah, these are like extreme, like, I guess, situations, you know, like pedophilia and things like this. But, you know, to anyone who's like not in the world of like, who's not young, you know,
Yeah.
the generation maybe like, I mean, my nieces, all they watch is YouTube. So like when they get older, YouTube's going to be their like broadcast television, if that makes sense, right?
Oh yeah, dude. When I at my job, I work in retail, and I'll see kids in like you know, shopping cars, and they've just got YouTube on 24/7. And I don't know if maybe it's the inner boomer in me, but I feel like that is just a bit too much. I mean, I'm all for kids having access to technology, but like just pacifying them with endless YouTube videos, and that can go awry. I'm sure you're familiar with like the weird YouTube kids content. It's like, oh, come on, man. You gotta put down some kind of, you know, limits on like on this stuff, because I mean, it's like kids are always gonna find stuff to you know, it's messed up. Like, I mean, I used to do that when I would surf through, you know, channels on cable, but like it's not to like this extreme like parody that it is now with YouTube.
It's crazy because I didn't really think of that till recently, where I was like, okay, what do a lot of people just have mindlessly on in the background, even if, you know, it's like broadcast television back in, at least when I was growing up, you know, we'd have like a channel on TV. God, I'm talking about this like it happened 80 years ago, but you wouldn't necessarily be paying TV all the time. It'd just be on. And that's kind of the similar thing to like YouTube now. It's like, YouTube's so good at like picking a video you probably like, passively watching YouTube just for free. And all it is ad supported, if that makes sense, right? It's like the new broadcast TV.
If you're somebody like me or Noah, like you get all kinds of strange stuff recommended that sometimes isn't of no relation at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
crazy what
especially
is actually
like
on YouTube.
I'm sorry, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say it's crazy sometimes the things that pop up, and then when that pops up and you watch it, somehow the recommended becomes like insanely infested with that thing, and you're like, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, exactly. a lot of the interesting stuff that I guess the most interesting stuff is now that like a lot of, you know, with broadcast television and that sort of thing on big channels, you really don't expect to see ads from anyone except big corporations that can afford ads. But then you have this like small scale targeted ad type thing that you have on YouTube or more specifically on sites like Facebook or Instagram. So you'll get these very weirdly specific targeted ads, and sometimes you're like, wow, that's exactly what I was interested in, and that's very, astute of them to figure that out. But other times it's just somebody who like seems like they're just trying out the ad function just because, and
Yeah.
it's like you don't even know what's being advertised. It's just like a random regular Instagram or Facebook post. But for some reason it's appearing as an ad in your feed and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I think the Google AdSense has gone wild with like what could be like it's weird. I don't see advertisements like anymore on YouTube only because like I signed up for like YouTube Premium because like so annoyed. But the like ads were like at some point getting to the point where it was just like I was like, look, this is the worst production value. It's like a guy standing in front of like a whiteboard, like telling how to get like rich. And I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
like, what? Like, I fine, you can do the board and you can stand here, but you can't be using like the onboard camera microphone. Like, that's where I draw the line.
The best of those ads is where like in the first 5 seconds before you can skip it, they're like, all right, I know what you're thinking. I know you think this sounds crazy, but this is not like those other videos.
Yeah.
And they proceed to go on in a way that's exactly like those other videos.
This one weird fruit will cure diabetes.
Yeah. Or they're trying to get you into drop shipping or doing Facebook ads for small businesses. If you click here, you can join the seminar, but if you don't, you will miss out on the seminar for this week. You do understand that, right?
I think I'm just waiting for like the blatant, like finally like the blatant Nigerian prince like YouTube ad. like hello, do not turn the video off. I want to say you have $14 million in a bank account. All you have to do is, it's going to be like, I cannot wait for it to go that low. Like where like the scam is now Nigerian Google AdSense.
I love that because like even though it's generalized and obviously the ad is going to like a number of people,
yes.
like it's talking to you, the viewer.
Yeah.
I really like.
Yeah. I remember I got this video on actually on Facebook of all places. It was this guy, one of these pickup artist guys, right? And he's wearing this shirt that looks like like those double-breasted aprons like chefs wear. And he's like wearing this, and then it's like he looks like a clown, and then he's got this woman standing next to him who just completely like not on this plane of reality, like she's just 100% tuned out, and he's looking directly at you and he's saying, hey, just click here for 3 simple methods that will get you laid instantly, guaranteed. So, I see that stuff, and what can you say? It's just absurd. I can't believe somebody's clicking on it, because that's how these work. People have to click on it for it to get out, even with money.
I don't know. I mean, I'm realizing that YouTube is just a juggernaut. Like I'm the more that I'm on it, I haven't made a video in like, I don't even remember, maybe 5 months, right? I still get just like a consistent, I get tens of thousands of views a month. I've only made 90 videos. Like,
right.
I don't really play the game. Like, I don't begrudge anyone who does their thing. It's just like, I don't know like what my thing would be other than just I make a video when I feel like it's creatively like inspiring to do it. But it's like the recommended and like all that is just crazy. Like my views don't like go down. They just keep going.
I mean, as long as your videos don't show up in the, like, Ben Shapiro Rex People compilation category of YouTube, I think you'll do fine.
I think that I want to, like, maybe tap into that, like, maybe something like millennial eviscerates analog synth. I don't know, something like that. Just like me in a thumbnail, just yelling at, like, an analog.
Dude, I'm just going off on another tangent. I'm sure you've seen it, but there's that guy, Simon Sinek, who always goes on about, well, you know why millennials are dumb is because they're always on their phone.
I do know this guy. I guess that, you know, we live in a very different time than I think sometimes, you know, like I'll look around, you know, and this is totally off topic, you know, but, you know, it will tap into something that I'm attempting to make a point about. But like, I was on YouTube, right? And I saw it said like latest news, and the latest news was like US sending troops to Saudi Arabia or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going to happen with this? You know, like, or is this like the
World War III,
like World War III or something, right? And then, you know, it's like after that, like YouTube like recommended me like Link's Awakening, and I'm like, what the? How are these related at all? But also like this sense of being like, look, I know people take all this synth stuff very like seriously, and they care like which synth makes the sound, but like, you know, who gives a car? Like, we're sending troops to what could be the start of an actual legitimate conflict. Like, maybe stop caring so much about this. Like, I hate to say that, you know.
Yeah.
That's my feeling behind it, most of this, at this point.
Yeah, dude, it was wild. Like, I remember the news section on Facebook, and there'd be wildly political news stories, and then there'd be, like, UFO found hovering over Louisiana. And it's like, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
And I know it, like, the thing is I was smart because I would never click into the links and Facebook feed. So my Facebook feed basically looked like, I mean, I guess as much as you can, a clean slate. So I think that's why we get, like, all these wild stories, because they couldn't really place me into any of their algorithms. They're just like, fuck it, let's just throw everything out there. See what he clicks. He's got to click something.
Yeah.
This guy's a maverick. He's watching everything. Throw everything at this guy. Yeah, it's just very. I think that like as a person who I claim to be, I don't know, woke. I don't know what the word is, but I claim to be a person of mild intelligence. I just feel like I know that it's nice to make YouTube videos, and it's nice for companies to want to send you stuff, right, for free. I mean, I think that's like YouTube story game that I constantly hear from wanting to start YouTube. It constantly is about, I want to get free stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's real shit going on in the world. And I know maybe we want to, like, you know, kind of the ignorance is bliss thing, but in all reality, like, synths are great, but like the people, and especially like if we're talking actually creatively, like the music that's made is what is really important.
Yeah.
Or what you can learn maybe from experiencing synth or something that seems important in building a community. And I don't know if maybe the media, or not even the pop culture, puts it out there, is there are lots of types of music that are happening right now, but there's only there's only like what, two that are like pushed by like the pop culture, like you know, like it's either like hip hop stuff or it's like the pop stuff, you know, like a Taylor Swift or like Drake or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Drake.
No shade to those people. It's just like it's easier to find like new music through like Spotify or whatever, but like, I'm always very surprised at like how big like very small acts can get. Like I'll go and I'll click on, it'll just randomly come up in a Spotify playlist. I'll go and click it and I'll be like, what? They got like 2 million listens? Like this, never heard of them. And then go to their page and you'll be like, oh, there's like a cool electronic like indie act, and you'll see like they have like a 25-day tour. What? But it's still as hard as ever to find new music in a weird way. I honestly don't listen to as much new music as I'd like to. I don't go to as many concerts as I'd like to. I feel like maybe people are better than me at this. There still seems for me like to be a lack of a community around smaller acts that haven't yet like popped. Like there's still the kind of like there's still that culture of like oh, I knew them before they were big. Now they suck. But yeah, I still hope for like a time where small musicians doing small things are like elevated by their contemporaries, because I see like a lot of times like I'll go into like a forum or I'll go you go on Reddit or something and someone will be like, hey guys, check out my SoundCloud link, like trying to like, and people will be like, fuck you, like don't do that. And it's just like, dude, this guy's just trying to like,
I mean, as long as they're not like spamming, like, if they're doing it in the right place, like I think people
where's the support? Like where's the, like, you don't have to listen to it, but there's so much, like, I know for sure, like, being on YouTube for a while, like, it's very easy to see, like, how negative can be about just like other creatives. Like, there's room for everyone to be creative in their own way and improve if that's what maybe that would be good for them. I don't know how to say this, but
yeah, sure.
So much like pulling down of some people who are trying to just figure it out sucks.
And I feel like part of the problem too is, you have people complaining about a site like YouTube, but they can't provide any alternatives. Or like, if they do, it's like horribly biased or broken that it's just basically, it's unusable.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, I honestly feel like, and maybe you guys don't know this, but in the community of synth YouTubers, there was a lot of like dislike for certain people. Like, like just because people on, say, Reddit said that like, oh, we hate like Bo Beats for being like shitty or something, right? Like, and being a shill or something, right? I honestly feel like this. Like, I feel like, don't ever think like that other synth people didn't not like Bo Beats or something, right? We are all, quote, on this platform, but not everybody agrees with the way that certain people run their channel, and I think that that's totally fine. Now, do I like Bo Beats and like, do I feel very like a good friend of mine? Absolutely, right? But it wasn't always that way. I just feel like, as a community, do I want him to like succeed and be good? Yeah, of course. But like, there was a time when Bo Beats and I were like very close in subscriber count or something, and I really cared about subscribers. And every day I hoped that he wouldn't gain another subscriber. So yeah, I mean, it's inside of a lot of creative people to be competitive, and I wish that it wasn't, but maybe it's natural.
I mean, I like to be competitive, but like at a certain point, there are some people that you have to, like, to me, I think as much as competition is out there, you also have to network, and you also have to, as you are larger, you have the ability to lift people up. And I think you have to be careful of, who you choose to lift up or promote. I think that is as important as it is for your own channel's growth. because networking in the end, you have to do it to survive. If you just, write people off, because I used to do this. I used to write people off, oh, they're doing their own thing. I don't really care for their stuff. But, I had this epiphany, like, I can't just stay in my own sphere. I can't just be so narrow-minded about my music taste. And ironically, what I found is the more I expanded out of my circle, the more I found myself enjoying stuff that I used to clown on people for liking.
Yeah. No, it's strange. It sucks because I'm a competitive person, and I wish that I didn't feel that way, because that's not how I feel now, because I see that, like, people are people at the end of the day, right? Just because I don't like someone's delivery doesn't mean that it's invalid, because that's how I feel, right? Like, I make the music for YouTube, right? And I got like tons of people like, man, I really blah 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 like the thing, right? And I got someone, I don't remember who, but they wrote like a legit, like, paragraph detailed explanation of what I did is the reason why music is terrible. Not just like you suck, but like you are the reason why music in this era is terrible.
Damn.
Yeah. It was like very long and like multiple paragraphs worth.
That's bizarre.
I mean, it's and I don't know, maybe people want to, maybe they think like this is like some sort of privilege or whatever to make music for this. But for me, I'm like, I thought that it was a good thing to make music so people could use it in videos for free. Like, I think like other services sometimes cost money, or YouTube's going to with the copyright system, right? So like, don't have your videos be claimed. Like, you can use this music I made. Like, it's easy.
This reminds me of have you followed the website The Hard Times? They're kind of like a parody of, like, well, I mean, they're kind of like The Onion in the sense they're a parody of like a lot of music, particularly punk, but they do a lot of parodies on other stuff too. And I remember The Hard Times had this article saying, "Man considered a sellout because he now has a stable job and family." And there really are people who think like that. They don't understand that the problem with somebody who's a sellout is not a matter of them trying to make bread, trying to, carve out their, own niche. It's a matter of, at what point do you disengage with your audience and just start talking down to your audience? To me, in my opinion, and I know other people that I've heard this from, I think that is really the true sign of somebody who's sold out. They no longer care about their audience. They're just out there doing their own thing. And like at that point, why even follow them? Because they clearly aren't passionate about their fans.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think like, also I would say like, is not the word like sellout like almost a terrible thing to like think? It's like,
Right.
I never hear of someone saying like, now maybe this is a bad example because he like the documentary, but Michael Jackson, I never hear of someone saying like, oh, Michael Jackson sold out. Sold out to what? Thriller?
Right.
Like, what would you want people to do, like, in general, in their lives? Someone goes from the cash register to assistant manager.
Yeah.
Is that selling out? Like, I don't know what defines it. I don't know anymore. Like, is it, because it always seems to come with a monetary gain. A person gains like, this is not a great example, but this is an example. I used to hang around like the music scene in like Hollywood a lot, and there was a guy. His name was Sonny, and Sonny used to be in like a pop punk act called From First to Last, like years before. He was literally like he was like a hanger on, whatever. He was fun, but he seemed like a hanger on, and it was fine, whatever. He wasn't doing anything. It didn't seem like. And then one day, Sonny is Skrillex, and he's the biggest electronic act on the planet. And I sat there and was like, whoa. I remember looking at Sonny's like Facebook page, and it was like 25,000. Like overnight, it was at like 2 million. And I thought to myself, okay, I listened to the music. I heard like Equinox, right? By Skrillex, right? And I literally was like, oh shit. Like this fucking guy. And one of my good friends was in the loft like next to him. He'd always talk about how Sonny would just be in there messing around in like Ableton doing like piano roll and like making music and stuff and whatever. But I didn't sit there and say like that guy's a sellout. Like he did something that was apparently really, commendable or whatever artistically, and the masses, he presented it and the masses accepted it as good. Yeah. I don't know how you can't sell out without putting something out and the masses accepting it as quality work, whether or not everyone thinks it's quality or if enough people think it's quality. Yeah. I mean, all you do is present it. Rebecca Black. I guess sure. Friday Goes Down is like shitty, or whatever. Like it's such a shitty song, but it's like no one will forget Friday.
With Skrillex, like that album Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, such a hugely influential. I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of dubstep, like his music left a huge impact on the electronic music community.
Huge. I really wanted to do a video. Maybe I'll eventually do it. I don't know. It still exists, but I wanted to make a video about this. If you guys know the plugin Massive, I did like a Google Trends search around Deadmau5, Skrillex, and the plugin Massive. You can do this you can check Google Trends, right? And you see that it's like, no, nobody cares. And then like 2007, there's a little buzz in like both Deadmau5 and Skrillex, whatever. It's very small. And then like you see this huge spike of Deadmau5, Skrillex, and Massive the plugin, all at the exact same time, and they all dropped off like a cliff, all around the same time. And it just shows you like everyone heard this music, no one cared about this thing. Then they heard that these two people who were incredibly influential used this thing, and everyone bought it. Yeah, so I mean, regardless of what people actually think, it's like a person literally went from like chilling out at random Hollywood bars, you not caring, to being the biggest on the planet, and then probably launching a second kind of business, like a big plug-in business for Native Instruments.
To kind of bring it back to, your channel within the synth community, are there other reviewers that you follow now that you really admire because of something you feel they do maybe better than you, or just in general, that something they have that you would really encourage people to check out?
I think one, I would really like to learn about smaller channels coming up. It's very hard to find them though, unfortunately. So I always look for recommendations. But I will always say that a channel that is just always inspiring, not just how to review a synth, but how to be a great YouTuber, is Andrew Huang. And I think everyone knows Andrew Huang's channel because he has like almost 2 million subscribers. But if we're talking about like editing skills, thumbnail skills, concept for video skills. I mean, that guy is like,
Oh yeah.
he's such the YouTuber that like you never realize is like he's that good. His videos are never boring. His cuts are so tight. Everything is always. It's just like, but it's effortless, and I think that's one thing that I would say is that's a person who's absolutely better than me, and I know that.
Is there anybody on YouTube right now, and the synth community, that maybe you just don't really understand the appeal of, or just don't know? I mean, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but have you like seen any like synth reviewer or somebody that came up on YouTube and you just couldn't understand like why they were popular?
I would probably say that it was, and I guess he didn't review necessarily, but Simon the Magpie. Did not understand. I guess you guys know who that is maybe now.
I know a little bit. I've seen like his video once, but
he's an interesting person who I did not like when I first started. We started around the same time. It's actually interesting if I say this, but like there's myself, Bo Beats, Simon the Magpie, Red Means Recording, and many other people actually started like for real in 2015. Very weird that it happened around that time and that we're all sort of maybe in the same circle. I don't know what happened in the world or something. But yeah, Simon the Magpie made videos that I didn't understand. He would do like circuit bending stuff on pedals and things like that. But he's now taken his channel to like a whole different like place. I guess you guys know Look Mum No Computer.
Oh yes, yeah. I don't know if no one knows him, but I'm very familiar with his videos.
Yeah, Sam, Look Mum No Computer is like, he's very much on the like conceptual, like big project kind of thing. Well, Simon, I guess, had to figure out what was his thing, and I would say he's like the tier below Look Mum No Computer. But in the beginning, I couldn't understand what he was doing at all. He was just this big personality who seemed like he was like negative and just always squawking. But now we're good friends. So it's just like sometimes, like people they don't see where their vision is, and then he did.
When you say that, okay, maybe in the past we had our disagreements, but we're friends now. That community is really important, I think, for the longevity of a hobby, something like this, to be able to have community and be able to grow. Because, I mean, when we start out, we all make stupid mistakes. I made my share of stupid mistakes online. And you have to learn from that and try and, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Maybe not be as quick to judge why they need that subscriber count or why they're trying to grow their views.
Yeah. I think that when you're starting out, you don't know how to get views, and at the same time, your intentions are fucked up because you're making the view number, not the creation and enjoyment of making something the enjoying part. And I was totally, in the beginning, fucked up about it. I probably stopped caring like 2 years ago, but I truly did care for at least a whole year because, I just wanted 1,000 subscribers. That's like all I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's crazy now to think about. Like, if somebody were to start today, I would tell them, I'd say, hey, if you can get 1,000 subs ever, that's a win, because this is crazy out here.
Yeah. Well, it's been nice talking with you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Is there anything you'd like to shout out right now?
I think if you are listening and it's NoirEtBlancVie is the channel. You can find me on, obviously, Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is probably the best place because I think posting videos there is cool. It's short if you don't have much time. Gonna have some more music out in a month maybe, up for Creative Commons through YouTube. Yeah, look for an actual Halloween video at the end of October.
Right. Maybe you'll play some John Carpenter for us.
I really gotta think. Can you guys maybe tell me of a? I've done. Okay, so I did the Ghostbusters theme on so I did Ghostbusters. I did. I need to think of what's a like an iconic Halloween song.
That's a good question. Because obviously...
Like Monster Mash, maybe?
See, I did Monster Mash.
This is Halloween. What is that from?
Oh, that's a good song. From Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's
Good. I would not have thought of that.
Thank you, Noah's
Okay.
girlfriend behind the scenes.
If you want to go absolutely ham, you could do like One-Eyed, One-Horned, Flying Purple People Eater.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
I guess if I start early, I can do something more complex.
I think for the podcast, it's always easier for me. Like the more time I have in advance to edit stuff, it frees me to, once I get past just the technical stuff, because that always comes with video editing. You gotta go through, edit all the technical stuff together. If you have more time, you can really delve into adding other kind of effects and visuals and music stuff. Yeah.
Sure that I don't run out of time at the end. Just because half the time when I'm doing at least it's been this way the whole time. I've only done monophonic Halloween episodes, so it's becomes really hard when you're doing multi-track song that needs chords all on one synth. It's just oh gosh.
Wow. That's quite fascinating, actually.
But I appreciate the suggestion because I would not have thought of that, but I love that from Nightmare Before Christmas.
All right. Well, it's been fun. It's DJ Angelfyre and 51st Citizen. We look forward to seeing you on the next installment. Thank you.